Bhavatu sahano bhunaktu sahaviryan karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim chaiva tato jayamudirayet. Om. Welcome back. We continue our study of Vidura, Niti, which is a series of chapters that comes in the Udyoga Parva. And just to pick up the thread, we missed a week, so we have to remember what we're seeing here. The context is that this is before the war, in fact, shortly before the war breaks out. And the blind king Dhritarashtra is having one of those sleepless nights that most of you are familiar with. He has a lot on his mind, including the thought that his 100 sons are likely to die in the battle, which is about to take place. He is sleepless and very distraught, and also filled with guilt because he recognizes his own role in precipitating the war. And because of his sleeplessness, in the middle of the night, he calls for Vidura. Vidura is his younger brother, half-brother, I suppose, and also one of his main ministers, advisors. So he wants some advice from Vidura, and he asks Vidura, please tell me what is best. And Vidura is in a very awkward position because his role, notice what Dhritarashtra did not ask is how to avoid the war. So what Dhritarashtra wants from Vidura is not a solution, but a distraction. He wants his mind to be distracted from everything that's about to take place so that he can fall asleep. So this is Vidura's uncomfortable situation, and we're going to see today, and in fact it's very clever. Vidura does so, and he does so brilliantly. The Vidura Niti. Niti literally means law, but here it means in a broader sense teachings. The teachings of Vidura. And there are basically two kinds of teachings. Some of the teachings are very Vedantic, and some of the teachings are more with regard to Dharma. We're going to see both of those categories of teachings today, both teachings about Advaita Vedanta and teachings of Dharma. And one thread I think we're going to see in this morning's class is that Vidura is highly critical of the king's bad decision-making, but Vidura just can't come out and tell him, you blew it. So Vidura is going to communicate his criticism to the blind king Dhritarashtra in some subtle ways. I'll try to point that out as we go. It's like a subplot. If you have a plot and a subplot. So the plot is Vidura trying to help the king fall back asleep. The subplot is Vidura is giving the subtle criticism. In our last class, we saw the very beginning of Vidura's teachings. We already saw this verse where he says, Yasya krityam na vignanti shitamushnam bhayam ratihi samriddhihi asamriddhihi va savai panditaha uchyate. This is the very beginning of Vidura's teachings to King Dhritarashtra. And he begins by defining who is really a pandita. And you'll see that his definition of pandita here has nothing to do with scholar. Here the word pandita is used in a very Vedantic sense. It really is used in the narrow sense of an enlightened person. That's not a common meaning for pandita. Usually we take pandita as a scholar of some kind. But here, Vidura wants to make a point. Who is truly wise? The truly wise are not those with a lot of academic, bookish knowledge. The truly wise are those who know their true self, Atma Swarupa. And with that knowledge, they become free from all problems. So he says, Yasya, one for whom, na vignanti, they are not troubled. Those who are not troubled by krityam, responsibilities, shitam, ushnam, cold and heat, bhayam, ratihi, fear and desires, samriddhi, asamriddhi, by prosperity and poverty. Such a person, saha panditaha uchyate. That is the real pandita. The real pandit is not one with a lot of bookish knowledge. The real pandita is a one who becomes free from suffering. How? Through the knowledge that you are immune to suffering. I made that remark during our meditation session. When you discover that the consciousness, which is the essence of who you are, is unchanging. This is the crucial point. And this, as I said before, it has to be discovered. It's not a matter of belief. It's not a matter of intellectual conviction. It's a matter of personal discovery. When you discover that your consciousness is immune to change, immune to being affected by anything and everything, then you will be utterly free from suffering. And that discovery makes you a pandita, not in the scholarly sense, but in the enlightened sense. So, we saw that much in our last class. We continue now. Vidura's instructions to King Dhritarashtra. Yatha shakti chikir shanti, yatha shakti chikir, yatha shakti chakurvate, yatha shakti chakur, na kinchirava manyante, na kinchirava man, pandita bharatarshabha, pandita bharatarshabha, O great king, panditaha. Such people are panditas. Pandita not in the sense of scholar, in the sense of enlightened. Who are they? Yatha Shakti Chikir Shanti. Chikir Shanti, they desire, they choose their intentions. Their intentions, Yatha Shakti, to the fullest extent of their capacity. Their intention is to follow Dharma. From context, we understand this is with regard to Dharma. Their intention, Yatha Shakti, to the extent of their capacity, to their full capacity, they intend to follow Dharma. Not only do they intend to follow Dharma, Yatha Shakti Chak Kurvate, they do follow Dharma. Their intention is fully engaged in following Dharma, and their actions are fully engaged in following Dharma. And who is he talking about? The enlightened ones. The enlightened ones always follow Dharma. Why? Good. We should ask that question, right? Why can we make this blanket statement? Why can Vidura make this blanket statement that enlightened people will always follow Dharma? We ask, isn't it possible for them to commit a sin, to do an act of adharma? So the question I introduced is, how can we make a blanket statement that one who's genuinely enlightened is incapable of committing an act of adharma? And that's actually what is taught here and elsewhere. Incapable how? And especially given the fact that you read in the newspapers of this Swami and that Swami doing all kinds of nasty things, and you say, if that person is a Mahatma, how could they do all those nasty things? If that person is a Mahatma, how do you know? In fact, I would argue, if someone commits an act of adharma It's proof and evidence that they're not a Mahatma, that they're not enlightened. And the basis for that statement is this. The motivation for adharma is raga and dvesha. Raga and dvesha, these inclinations to chase after what you want and to go away from what you don't want, dvesha, which can distort our reasoning and cause us to do something which is contrary to dharma. The enlightened person is, by definition, free from raga dvesha. Why? Having discovered your own innate fullness, what is there to chase after? And what is there to be avoided? If you know your true nature is full and complete and unaffected by anything and everything, there's absolutely nothing that would compel such a person to chase after something and to violate dharma based on raga, or to run away from something and violate dharma due to dvesha, So properly understood, enlightenment results in the complete absence of raga dvesha. In the complete absence of raga dvesha, there's no possibility of a dharmic action. For this reason, we make the statement that for this reason, Vidura says that they where are we here? Yata shakti chakurvate, according to their capacity, to their fullest of their capacities, they always dharmam kurvate, they always follow dharma. Now further he says, na kinchat avamanyante. This is where that little subtle criticism of Dhritarashtra comes in. Avamanyante, na avamanyante, they don't ignore, they don't neglect kinchit, everything. They don't overlook anything, they don't ignore anything. This is the enlightened person. They take reality exactly as it is without ignoring anything, without sweeping anything under the carpet, as we say in American English. Unlike Dhritarashtra, who his blindness is not only physical, it's also highly symbolic. He's blind to what he doesn't want to see. His blindness allows him to be manipulated by his son, Duryodhana. He's constantly manipulated by Duryodhana. And he's blind to the consequences of that. We could say he is blinded. This is a symbolic interpretation. Dhritarashtra is blinded by his attachment to his son, Duryodhana. So that blindness is symbolic here, and the avamanyante means not to see something, to disregard something, to ignore something. So he says, nakin charavamanyante panditaha. Those who are truly wise, excuse me, those who are truly wise don't ignore anything. They see reality exactly as it is. They don't try to turn their head. What is the expression? They don't look the other way. And Dhritarashtra does a lot of that, looking the other way, trying to ignore the consequences of his bad decisions. So here, excuse me just a moment. Good. So here, Vidura is walking this fine line. At one point he'll say, "O great wise king." We saw that in the prior class. And then he makes the expression dig, these subtle digs, which means these very subtle criticisms that are that are not really obvious. So this is the first of several. where Vidura says, the truly wise ignore nothing. The unspoken part is, unlike you, O king. He won't say that. All right, then. Na prapyam abhivanchanti, na prapya nashtam nechanti shochitam, nashtam nechanti. Apat suchana muhyanti, apat suchana muhyanti. Nara pandita buddhayaha, nara pandita. Naraha, men, people, who are pandita buddhayaha, who have minds with pandita. And again, pandita doesn't mean scholarship, it means enlightened. So those people with enlightened minds, what are they like? Na aprapyam abhivanchanti. Na abhivanchanti, they don't desire, they don't long for aprapyam, what they don't have. They don't long for what they don't have, and na ichanti shochitum, they don't want to grieve nashtam, when something is lost. So they're not driven by raga dvesha, isn't that what it said? So the first one, aprapyam na abhivanchanti, they don't long for what they don't have raga, and nashtam na ichanti shochitum, they don't grieve when something is lost. When something is lost, you resent that. That's dvesha. So these wise people are free from raga dvesha. How? And we discussed that several times in the last class and briefly today. It's only through. It's not a matter of will. Let's make that very clear. It's not a matter of will. Which means if somebody is sad and you tell them to cheer up, you're actually making a mistake. Because you're assuming that coming out of sadness is a matter of choice and that it can be brought about through an act of willful effort. That's generally not the case. If somebody is sad, if they could just choose to be happy, wouldn't they be happy? Obviously. So if somebody is sad and you tell them to cheer up, you're actually doing them a disservice. You're devaluing their sadness. You're negating their sadness. You're kind of ignoring their sadness, and that's not helpful. If somebody is sad and if you want to help them, then you help them by acknowledging their sadness, not by denying their sadness. So here, the enlightened person is free from raga and dvesha because they have recognized the fullness of one's own self. We said it's a matter of personal discovery leading to atma jnanam, self-knowledge, knowledge of your true self as Satchidananda. Can't be faked. And, I made one note here. Something else that doesn't work is positive thinking. This is a very popular thing from time to time. Somebody is sad, and you have to say, okay, think positive. Oh, it's not terrible. It's not as bad as cheer up. Cheer up is terrible advice. Think positive is better advice, but it's really limited. So you try to cheer the person up by telling them a nice... Remember last week when we were together and we did this and that and the other thing and it was so much fun, right? And you're telling, and that works, right? You turn their mind to something really happy. You turn their mind away from the sadness and you turn their mind towards something which is happy, and they cheer up. It works. It's good psychology. It works. But it's also quite limited because after you're done talking to the person and you go away, then what happens? They go right back down. They're sad again. That's the limitation of positive thinking. Positive thinking works as long as you're thinking like that. As soon as that positive thinking goes away, the original problem returns. So this psychological solution is not enough. which is why Puja Swami Dayananda was famous for this statement. Many of you have heard it. He said, very bold statement. He said, in psychology, there is no solution. Meaning what? Solution to the problem of human suffering. He said boldly, in psychology, there's no solution. In Vedanta, there's no problem. Because your true nature, being full and complete, is immune to any kind of suffering. So this was his statement. Of course, that works, as I said, can't fake it. It's only when you personally make that discovery of your innate fullness. Then, Vidura concludes, apatsu na vimuhyanti. Those who are enlightened, free from raga dvesha, as he said in the first half, they na muhyanti, they don't get disturbed apatsu in times of disaster, in calamities, during crises, apatsu. During crisis, they are not disturbed. Who is disturbed? Who is Vidura talking to? King Dhritarashtra, who is in the midst of an apat. Apat means disaster, catastrophe. So Dhritarashtra is in the midst of a crisis, and Vidura says, the truly wise don't get disturbed in the middle of a crisis. He says to Dhritarashtra, who himself is disturbed in the midst of a crisis. So you see these subtle little criticisms, subtle digs, as we say in English, that Vidura is sticking in. But he has to do so very carefully, because he doesn't want to make... He's genuinely trying to help the blind king, but I guess he can't resist expressing what's deep in his heart, Vidura. Then he continues. Na hrishatyatma sammane, na hrishatyatma navamane na tapyate, navamane gango hradayivakshobhyo, gango hradayivak yasa pandita uchyate, yasa pandita yaha saha, that person, Uchyate is called panditaha. That person is called wise. What kind of person is called wise? Na hrishyati atma sammane. Atma sammane. Here atma doesn't mean Satchidananda, it just means oneself. Atma sammane, when somebody is praised. Atma sammana is praise. So atma sammane, when a wise person is praised, na hrishati, they don't get puffed up. Hrish is to be excited, and hrish, that verbal root is also used when your hairs stand up. They use the same verbal root is used for when your hairs stick up. So here it says when the wise person is praised, they don't get all excited, they don't get puffed up, and na avamanena tapyate, avamanena, if they are criticized, if they are put down, if they're insulted, na tapyate, they are not hurt. They're not emotionally injured if they're insulted. So a wise person, when praised, doesn't get puffed up. A wise person, when insulted, doesn't get hurt or disturbed. Why? Well, you can, based on all of our discussion, you can answer that, but let me add, in addition to what we've already said about Atma being consciousness, being imperturbable, which would be a good word to use here, unchangeable, I said before, we can add to that the knowledge that the wise person knows that whatever is being praised or whatever is being insulted, the wise person knows it's not me. So if you praise If you praise a person's body or mind or deeds, the wise person knows it's not my body, it's not my mind, they're not my deeds. So if you praise or insult the body, mind, and deeds, which isn't theirs, it's like if somebody praises your neighbor's house, what is it to you? Or if somebody criticizes your neighbor's house, what is it to you? That's the point. And the enlightened person has that perspective. Whatever is being criticized or praised is unconnected to the person. Therefore, it doesn't get puffed up, doesn't get hurt. Coming back to Dhritarashtra, this praise and criticism is a common form of emotional manipulation. This is something we see going on in our lives constantly. Now, you won't do this, but many people do. To get their way, if somebody is in a position of power, they will praise them. So why would you praise that person who is in a position of power? It's a form of manipulation, right? And if you're angry at someone, you might criticize them. What are you doing? You are manipulating their emotions. By praising them and criticizing them, you're manipulating your emotions to fulfill your own agenda. And one thing that we know, following the story of the Mahabharata, is that King Dhritarashtra is very much vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Certainly, Duryodhana, to use the American expression, Duryodhana has him under his thumb, which means Duryodhana is capable of complete emotional control, complete control of his father Dhritarashtra through emotional manipulation. The enlightened persons are free from such emotional manipulation. Finally, Vidura says, Gangaha Hridaha Eva Akshobhyaha. We've been talking about this. Akshobhyaha. Good translation. Imperturbable. Did I try? Yeah, and that's a translation I give here. Akshobhyaha. Imperturbable. And a beautiful example. Gangaha Hridaha. Hrida means lake. Ganga here means like the Ganga. So like the Ganga is long, suppose a lake is vast. A lake which is as vast as the Ganga is long. I think the Ganga is like 2,000-3,000 miles long. It's a huge river. I don't know, maybe not that long. It's long. So if a lake is as vast as the Ganga is long, it is said to be imperturbable. A small lake, you could perhaps, with wind or throwing things in, you can disturb the lake, but a vast lake is imperturbable, and the enlightened person is like that vast lake. We've seen this before. What is it in Bhagavad Gita? At the end of chapter 2, Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti tadvata. This famous metaphor of all the rivers running into the ocean, emptying into the ocean. If all the rivers empty their waters into the ocean, does the level of the ocean go up? And in spite of, it doesn't mention this, but in spite of the fact that each day an immense amount of water is evaporated from the oceans, an immense amount of water gets evaporated, the level doesn't go down. The level of the ocean doesn't go up or down because of its vastness. That which is vast then becomes imperturbable, like this big lake he speaks about, and the enlightened person is like that vast lake. So full, so complete, nothing can affect you. Again, my mind goes back to some of Puja Swami Dayananda's favorite teachings. And he would observe when a 2-year-old is angry and a 2-year-old curses you using 2-year-old language. How does a 2-year-old curse you? You dumb. So this is the 2-year-old cursing you out. You dumb. You bad. Something like that. So when a 2-year-old curses you out, do you get really hurt and upset? In fact, you start to smile. It's so silly. And why, Puja Swamiji observed, your heart, to speak loosely, inside you are bigger than the 2-year-old. When you are bigger in your heart than the 2-year-old, how can that 2-year-old's nasty language affect you when you are big enough inside? And there's a problem when the 42-year-old insults you or the 52-year-old insults you. That's where you struggle. Why? You're not big enough inside. Puja Swamiji said, when you are big enough inside, when you are like that, this Gangaha Hridaha, like this vast lake, then nothing can affect you. The 2-year-old won't affect you. The 52-year-old won't affect you when you are big enough inside. Vidura's teachings. So far, he's been kind of making these subtle criticisms of King Dhritarashtra. Now, in the next verse, he's not so subtle. Let's see that. Ekam hanyana hanyad, ekam hanyana va. Ishur mukto dhanushmata, Ishur mukto dhanush. Buddhir buddhimato srishta, Buddhir buddhimato srisht. Hanyad rashtram sarajakam, Hanyad rashtram. Look at the second line. Ishuhu muktaha dhanushmata. Ishu is a arrow. So when an arrow is muktaha, set free, which means shot. When the arrow is set free, when the arrow is shot forth by whom? Dhanushmata, by the archer. When an archer looses an arrow, ekam, first line, one person, hanyat, might be killed, nava hanyat, or might not be killed. So when an archer fires one arrow, what are the possible consequences? Could be nothing, nahanyat, or worst case scenario, firing one arrow is one person gets killed. This is true of an archer. What of a leader? So Dhritarashtra is the king. He shouldn't be king. If you know the story, there are a lot of reasons he shouldn't have been king. Anyway, due to the whole complicated plot, he ends up as king. And a very unskillful king, a very easily manipulated a king who, again, that blindness is symbolic. A king who can't see the difference between dharma and adharma. Another symbolic meaning for that blindness. So, such a king is capable of making mistakes, capable of making blunders, capable of causing harm. When the archer shoots an arrow, at worst, one person gets killed. But when a king, the leader of a kingdom, makes a blunder, makes a terrible mistake, the consequences can be far greater. And that's what Vidura observes here. So in the first half, when that archer fires an arrow, one person, ekam, one person might be killed or might be spared. On the other hand, buddhi mata, Oh, he's really careful with his language, Vidura. Buddhimata utsrishta buddhihi. Buddhimata, by a wise person. Buddhimata. So he's addressing Dhritarashtra. So he's actually... This is I don't know if... You wouldn't do this, but sometimes people will simultaneously praise you and criticize you. That's exactly what he's doing here. So he says, Vidura says to King Dhritarashtra, the metaphor is the archer shoots an arrow. Here, buddhimata, by an intelligent person, not by an archer, by an intelligent person, what is utsrishta, what is set loose, is buddhihi, his mind. So the weapon used by an archer is that arrow. The weapon used by an intelligent person is the mind. And in this context, Vidura is suggesting that you, King Dhritarashtra, you are intelligent. So when an archer shoots an arrow, at worst, one people might be killed. But when an intelligent person sets loose their mind incorrectly, when an intelligent person uses the mind not for the sake of following dharma, but for the sake of following adharma, then he says, Hanyat Rashtram, then the entire kingdom might be destroyed. Sa Rajakam, along with its king. You see, this is not subtle criticism at this point. This is pointed criticism. So he is talking about the king of a land, but he's also using the word buddhimata, by that wise king. So he is the implication is, O Dhritarashtra, you are intelligent, and he was intelligent, but easily manipulated. So buddhimata, by an intelligent king, the unspoken part, like you, O King Dhritarashtra, when an intelligent leader, buddhihi utsrishta, sets loose their mind. Sets loose their mind means what? Applies their mind, not in following dharma, but in committing acts of adharma. Then what are the consequences? The consequences of an arrow is one death. The consequence of a king making a huge blunder is what? Rashtram hanyat. The entire kingdom can be lost. So Rajakam, along with the king, which means O Dhritarashtra, you're going to destroy your own kingdom along with yourself. So in a clever way, Vidura here is both giving the king this wonderful discourse, a lot of Vedantic wisdom, and at the same time these subtle criticisms are coming out towards King Dhritarashtra. With this verse, the first part of this Vidura Niti is concluded. Then he moves on into another part. The topic changes. The first part was very much focused on Vedantic wisdom. Who is a Pandita? Who is an enlightened person? The next part now is going to talk more about Dharma. Of course, Dharma is an equally important topic. Don't think it's less important, and you'll see that as these verses are come. And he begins, however, with how can I call this? Kind of like word play. So this Mahabharata that we're studying is Mahakavya, a great work of poetic literature. These verses, of course, please remember when we're reading this, we're reading Vidura's dialogue with King Dhritarashtra. Do you think Vidura speaks in verses like this? So let's remember that these are verses composed by Vyasa, based on the actual dialogue between Vidura and and King Dhritarashtra. If you ask, how can Vyasa know all of this? Vyasa is held to be omniscient, all-knowing. So Vyasa, as a rishi, seems to be endowed with this power of knowing whatever is going on in all times, all places. So based on his knowledge of the dialogue between Vidura and his king, Vyasa composes these verses. And sometimes when you're composing verses, you like to kind of have fun. And what we're going to see right now is Vyasa having fun, using some, we'll call it word play. Let's see the verse and then you see what I mean by word play. And this introduces the next topic. Ekaya dve vinishchitya, ekaya dve vinish, trin shatur bhirvashe kuru, trim shatur bhirvashe, pancha jitva viditva shata, pancha jitva viditva, sapta hitva sukhi bhava, sapta So ignore my translation and just see the bare meaning of the verse. Ekaya, with one, dve vinishchitya, figuring out the two by means of the one, trincha, and the three, chaturbihi vashe kuru, controlling the three by the four, panchajitva, conquering the five, viditva shat, knowing the six, saptahitva, giving up the seven, sukhi bhava, remain happy. What in the world is he talking about? So, using the one to understand the two, using the four to conquer the three, using, conquering the five, understanding the six, and giving up the seven. Without a commentary, you won't get any meaning at all out of this. In my translation, I put in some of the meaning. So ekaya, with the one. With the one what? With the one mind. And you can see the wordplay, right? So this is Vyasa having fun, expressing his creativity. Nice. So ekaya, with the one, which means what? One mind. With eka manas, with one mind. Dve, two things. Vinishchitya, discerning the two. What are the two? Dharma and adharma. By means of one mind, you ascertain the two being dharma and adharma. And then, trin vashe kuru. The three should be controlled. What three? And by the way, this verse makes some references to Kautilya's Arthashastra. So these references of the groups are based on this famous text called Arthashastra, attributed to an ancient teacher called Kautilya, also known by other names. And it was basically a text mostly about how to rule a kingdom. And if you're ruling a kingdom, the people in your kingdom will fall into three categories, which means they might be on your side, they might be friendly to you, they might be on the other side, they might be against you, or the people might be neutral towards you. So with reference to one king's relationship with another kingdom, it might be a friendly relationship, it might be an inimical relationship, or it might be a neutral relationship. So the three means three categories of people. People who are friendly to you, people who are enemies to you, and people who are neutral towards you. So those three, vashe kuru, should be controlled by you. You have to control, if you're the king, you better be able to control them. How should you control them? Chaturbihi, by the four. And what are the 4? Well, Kautilya is famous for his instruction to kings. This is not really for common people. So his instruction for kings is a 4-fold strategy for solving conflicts, for handling conflicts. So suppose there is a conflict between one person and another, and the king has to resolve that conflict. What strategies can the king use to resolve that conflict? One strategy is called sama. Sama means make them to equalize the situation. So sama, to equalize the situation, to make everyone happy. Sama. The next strategy is let me rephrase this. The context is how to deal with these 3 kinds of people. How to deal with people. Let me generalize this a little bit. This is Kautilya's strategy. By the way, his strategies could be kind of severe, and you'll see evidence of this. So how to deal with a person. One way is sama. And here in that context it would mean to please them, to make them happy, to take away the problem. And then if that doesn't work, so first you allow me to use some casual English. First, make nice. If that doesn't work, that's sama, make nice. If that doesn't work, dana, give them something. Try to buy them off. So first sama, make nice. If that doesn't work, dana, buy them off, give them something, try to please them by giving them something. If that doesn't work, bheda. Bheda literally means division, and in this case it would be like a distraction. It would mean like to make the person focus on some other problem, to distract the person so that you don't have to deal with them. It really is in the context of like warfare. So if you're dealing with another country, how to deal with an adjacent kingdom, one strategy is sama, make nice with them. Another strategy is dana. This is one of the main strategies of the United States. I'm not sure how effective it is. What I mean to say is the United States gives an incredible amount of financial support to all kinds of countries all over the world. It's part of a diplomatic strategy, as you all know. How successful it is debatable. But anyway, that's the strategy. So sama, make nice. Dana is buy them off. Then comes bheda, distraction. And that would be like using the CIA to create some trouble over here to distract your enemy country. So that's bheda, distraction. And the fourth option is danda, which means force or power, and it means you just invade them. So how to deal with a neighboring kingdom, according to Kautilya: 1 is sama, make nice. 2 is dana, buy them off. 3 is bheda, distraction. 4 is danda, invade the other country, take them over. And presumably the strategy could be used for dealing with individual people as well, but the context is more in dealing with countries that might be of these 3 categories. The country might be a friendly country, might be an enemy country, or might be a neutral country. Then, so with these 4 strategies, controlling the 3, friend, enemy, and neutral, and then pancha jitva, conquering the 5. And this word 5 is most often associated with our 5 indriyas, 5 senses. So conquering the 5 senses, sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. Why? Even Vedanta notes very clearly that we are dragged about by our senses, so to speak. You see something attractive, you run after it. You see something frightening, you run away from it. We're back to raga, dvesha, right? So raga and dvesha are fueled by our five senses. They're driven. Raga and dvesha is driven by our five senses. So pancha jitva, conquering the five senses. Viditva shat, knowing the six. There are various interpretations of the six. The most common interpretation is probably shad adi, a term most of you are familiar with, the six enemies. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. These are the six enemies which are the most dangerous. Why are they the most dangerous? These are the enemies who have already infiltrated your camp, so to speak. Kind of using Kautilya's language. He used all of that kind of language. So enemies who have already infiltrated your camp are the most dangerous enemies. These are enemies who have infiltrated your mind. Kama, desire. Krodha, anger. Lobha, greed. Moha, delusion. Mada, pride. And matsarya, envy. These are enemies in our own minds, in our own hearts. Though just like on a battlefield, an enemy who has infiltrated beyond the line, those are the most dangerous enemies. In the same way, the enemies who have infiltrated your mind are the most enemies. So those six, shad, shadadi, viditva, knowing them, sapta, hitva, giving up the seven. Now, what are the seven? There are various interpretations. Later, in a few verses, he's actually going to enumerate the seven. In a later verse, he's going to say, giving up the seven. Which are the seven? Women, women. How's that? Number one. So, who wrote that scripture? Kautilya. Was male or female? If Kautilya was female, she would have written, giving up men. So the context is giving up objects of romantic and sexual attraction. That's the idea. Because this romantic and sexual attraction causes people to really do stupid things. I don't have to tell you. Anyway. So sapta hitva, giving up the seven. Number one is women. Number two, gambling. Number three, hunting. Really interesting that it found its way into the list. Number four is an obvious one, drinking. Number five, harsh speech. And this list is from Kautilya, and he mostly addresses leaders, heads of governments, heads of state. So a leader should be careful not to use harsh speech. Number six is harsh punishment, again addressing a leader. And number seven is misuse of wealth. You can see how well addressed this is for people in a position of power. Being in a position of power, they should very carefully watch that there's no harsh speech, no harsh punishment, and that wealth is not misused. So here we have this wordplay with the one discerning the two, with the four controlling the three, giving up the five, knowing the six, giving up the seven, then what? Sukhi bhava. You remain happy. The idea being if you don't do all those other things, you will not remain happy. Now the next sequence of verses is a expansion on that one clever verse is now expanded upon in a series of verses. So the first verse will talk about the one, the next verse will talk about the two, and then the three, and then the four. So these are the next 7 verses. We won't finish it, but we'll get started on that. Eko dharma param shreya, eko dharma param shreya, kshamayka shantiruttama, kshamayka shantiruttama. Vidyayika paramadrishtir, vidyayika parama, ahimsaika sukavaha, ahimsaika sukavaha. Very beautiful, simple. So the one, ekaha. Ekaha dharmaha. The one is dharma. What is that one? He says, by the one, you should discern the two. The one is the mind. The two was dharma and adharma. So by the one mind, what should the mind be focused on? Dharma. So ekaha dharmaha. That one is dharma, which is param shreyas, which is the greatest good. Kshama eka. He's going to define the one in 4 different ways. So the first definition of the one is dharma. The second definition of the one is kshama, forgiveness. Why? Shantihi uttama. It leads to the greatest peace. Forgiveness leads to the greatest peace. Think about the situation on their battlefield. If there could be forgiveness on both sides, both the Kauravas had plenty to be resentful about, the Pandavas had plenty. They both had plenty to be resentful about. If they could drop all their resentment, that terrible war would not have taken place. Would you allow me just to make an observation here? Because I know in many families there are problems. I hope not in your families, but it happens. It happens a lot. And sometimes it's shocking how difficult these problems can be. And most of the time, some family member did something awful and hurt another family member. It happens a lot. But what is much more sad is how the resentment for that mistake. So one family member made a mistake and caused harm to another family member. And 20 years later, the resentment is still there. What a sad thing. The fact is, we all make mistakes. And sometimes our mistakes hurt others. I have made mistakes that have hurt others. I suspect you also have made mistakes which have hurt others. When I look back on my mistakes, I really hope that the person would understand that I was young and stupid when I made that mistake, and I'm a little bit older and wiser now. So I would hope that person could forgive me now for the mistake I made when I was young and stupid. For the mistakes you've also made, you hope that the person can understand that you blew it. You made a mistake, and you hope that person would forgive you. If we would like others to forgive us, shouldn't we be prepared to forgive the others? When we judge our own mistakes, which have caused harm, we see our own mistakes as being forgivable. Correct? We see our own mistakes as being forgivable. If we judge our mistakes to be forgivable, what about the other? And then we judge the other person's mistakes as are unforgivable. What kind of hypocrisy is that? Our mistakes are indeed forgivable. Their mistakes are equally forgivable. If we can drop that resentment and anger and hurt and frustration, then Shantihi uttama. Then we can have peace in the family, peace in the country, peace in the world at any level. All of this is based on eka kshama, based on that one principle of kshama, forgiveness. Then the next one, eka, is vidya. Vidya, wisdom. Eka vidya. The one is vidya, wisdom, which is parama drishtihi, which is the highest vision, the highest perspective, highest, greatest, when you see the big picture. you see how everything fits in. If you don't see the big picture, most of you have heard my metaphor of the going to a museum and seeing a painting. If you go to a famous museum and you see a 500-year-old painting, if you stand 2 inches away from the painting, all you'll see are these little cracks in the pigment. But if you stand back from that painting and see the whole thing, you'll see a work of incredible beauty. This is the problem. If we fail to see the big picture, we see ugliness. If we see the whole picture, we can see the beauty. So here, Eka Vidya, the one is Vidya, knowledge, wisdom. And what is that wisdom? It is Uttama Drishtihi, the highest vision, the highest perspective, seeing the whole picture. Finally, Eka Ahimsa. Not surprisingly, Eka, the one which should be guiding our minds is Ahimsa. Ahimsa, the principle of doing the least harm. And that Eka, that one principle of Ahimsa is Sukavaha, brings happiness to you. If it is so clear, if we harm others, what happens to us? We get harmed. Directly, indirectly, sooner or later. When we refrain from harming others, we then avoid a lot of harm to ourselves. That is sukha. Sukavaha, eka, ahimsa. So therefore ahimsa is that which brings happiness, sukavaha. So this is number 1. So that wordplay verse, the prior verse, gave 7 different things. So in the coming class, we'll work our way. We're done with number 1, and then we'll see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and that'll bring us to the end of this first chapter on Vidura Niti. I think we have one more chapter. We'll see. Okay. Some quick announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our program for teenagers at 11. Also at 11 is our Gita at Work study group. You're welcome to join. At 5 p.m. is the mindful movement and meditation session. At 6:15 is a question-answer session I will conduct. You're all welcome. Let me just remind you that we had to cancel last week's classes due to illness. Make sure you're on our email list and check your email before coming to class. That way, if there's any cancellation due to ill health or due to weather, so make sure that you're signed up for those emails. The library will be open after class, and we'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.